Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone, my name is Ananda Salsabila Ramadhani and I'm from English Education Class B 2019. So this video is for my summary of the Brown's book, Teaching by Principles, an Interactive Approach to Language Pedagogy, 2nd edition, a methodical history of language teaching. In this section, we focus on methods as the identifying characteristic of a century of modern language teaching effort. What do we mean by the term method by which we tend to characterize that history? How do methods reflect various trends of disciplinary thought? How does current research on language learning and teaching help us to distinguish in our history between passing fads and the good stuff? These are some of questions we will address in this chapter. Approach, method, and techniques. Edward Anthony, 1966, gave us a definition that has admirably withstood the test of time. His concept of method was the second of three hierarchical elements, namely approach, method, and technique. An approach, according to Anthony, was a set of assumptions dealing with the nature of language, and teaching. Method was described as an overall plan for a systematic presentation of language based upon a selected approach. Techniques were the specific activities manifest in the classroom that were consistent with a method and therefore were a harmony with an approach as well. To this day, for better or worse, Anthony's terms are still in common use among language teachers. A teacher may, for example, at the approach level, affirm the ultimate importance of learning in relaxed state of mental awareness just above the threshold of consciousness. The method that follows might resemble. Techniques could include playing baroque music while reading a passage in the foreign language, getting students to sit in the yoga position while listening to a list of words, or having learners adopt a new name in the classroom and role-play that new person. A couple of decades later, Jack Ricard and Theodore Rogers proposed a reformulation of the concept of method. Anthony's approach, method, and technique were renamed respectively approach, design, and producer, with a subordinate term to describe this three-step process, now called method. Through their reformulation, Richard and Roger made two principal contributions to our understanding of the concept of method. The first, they specified the necessary elements of language teaching design that had therefore been left somewhat vague. Second is, Richard and Roger nudged us into a last, relinquishing the notion that separate, definable, discrete methods are the essential building block of methodology. Follows is set of definitions that reflect that current use that will be used in this book. Methodology, or pedagogical practice in general, including theoretical underpinnings and related research. Whatever considerations are involved in the how to teach are methodological. Approach, theoretically well-informed position and beliefs about the nature of language learning, and the applicability of both of pedagogical settings. Method, a generalized set of classroom specification for accomplishing linguistic objectives. Method tend to be concerned primarily with teacher and student role and behaviors, and secondarily with such features as linguistic and subject matters, objective, sequencing, and materials. They are almost always thought of as being broadly applicable to a variety of audiences in a variety of contexts. Curriculum or syllabus, designed for carrying out a particular language program. Features include a primary concerned with the specification of linguistic and subject matter objectives, sequencing, and materials to meet the needs of a designated group of learners in a definite context. The term syllabus is usually used more customarily in the United Kingdom to refer to what is called a curriculum in the United States. Next, or the last, is techniques, also commonly referred to by other term, any of a wide variety of exercises, activities, or tasks used in the language classroom for realizing lesson objectives. Changing wine and shifting sense. Albert McWhirter saw these changing wines and shifting sense as a cyclical pattern in which a new method emerged about every quarter of a century. Each new method broke from the old but took with it some of the positive aspects of the previous practices. A good example of this cyclical nature of method is found in the revolutionary audiolingual method of the mid-20th century. The ELM borrowed tense from its predecessor, the direct method. Within a short time, however, ALM critics were advocating more attention to think, to cognition, and the rule of learning, which to some smacked of a return to grammar translation. The grammar translation method. A historical sketch of the last 100 years of language teaching must be set in the context of a prevailing customary language teaching tradition. For centuries, there were few, if any, theoretical foundations of language learning upon which to base teaching methodology. In the Western world, foreign language learning in school was synonymous with the learning of Latin or Greek. Latin taught to promote intellectuality through mental gymnastics was until relatively recently held to be indispensable to an educated higher education. Latin was taught by means of what has been called that classical method, focused on grammatical rules, memorization of vocabulary and of various declensions and conjunctions, translation of text, doing written exercise, and as other language began to be taught in the educational institution in the 18th and 19th centuries, the classical method was adopted as the chief means for teaching foreign language. Little thought was given at the time to teaching someone how to speak the language. After all, languages were not being taught primarily to learn oral or oral communication, but to learn for the sake of being scholarly, or in some instance for gaining reading proficiency in a foreign language. Since there was little, if any, theoretical research on second language acquisition in general, or in the acquisition of reading proficiency, foreign language was taught as any other skill was taught. Rader and Charles Marshall list the major of characteristics of grammar translation. The first classes are taught in the mother tongue with little active use the target language. Second is much vocabulary is taught in the form of lists of isolated words. Next is long, elaborate explanation of the intricacies of grammar are given. Next is grammar provides the rule or putting words together, and instruction often focuses on the form and inflection of words. Next, reading of difficult classical texts is began early. Next is little attention is paid to the content of texts, which are treated as exercises in grammatical analysis. Next is often the only drills are exercised in translating this connected sentence from the target language into the mother tongue. And the last is little or no attention is given to pronunciation. Join and series method. The history of modern foreign language teaching may be said to have begun at In the late 1900s, with Francois Goin, a French teacher of Latin with remarkable insights, history doesn't normally credit Goin as the founder of language teaching methodology because at that time his influence was overshadowed by that of Charles Berlitz, the popular German founder of the direct method. Nonetheless, some attention to Goin's unusually perceptive observation about language teaching helped us to set the stage for the development of language teaching methods for the century following the publication of his book, The Art of Learning and Studying Foreign Language in 1880. So the conclusion, language learning is primarily a matter of transforming perception into conception. Children use language to represent their conception. Language is a mean as a think of representing the world on oneself. The direct method, Richards and Roger summarized to the principle of the direct method. Classroom instruction was conducted exclusively in the target language. Only everyday vocabulary and sentences were taught. Oral communication skills were built up in a carefully treated progression organized around question and answer exchange between teacher and students in small intensive classes. Grammar was taught inductively. New teaching points were taught through modeling and practice. Concrete vocabulary was taught through demonstration, object and pictures. Abstract vocabulary was taught by association of ideas. Both speech and listening comprehension were taught, and correct pronunciation and grammar were emphasized. The audiolingual method. The characteristic of the audiolingual method may be summed up in the following list, adapted from Prater and Salz-Marcia. The first is new material is present in the dialogue form. There is dependence on mimicry, memorization of set phrases, and overall learning. Structures are sequenced by means of contrastive analysis and taught one at a time. Structural patterns are taught using repetitive drills. There is a little or no grammatical explanation. Grammar is taught by inductive analogy rather than by deductive explanation. Vocabulary is strictly limited and learned in context. There is much use of tabs, language labs, and visual aids. Great importance is attached to pronunciation. Very little use of the mother tongue by teachers is permitted. Successful responses are immediately reinforced. There is a great effort to get students to produce error-free utterance. And last, there is a tendency to manipulate language and disaggregated content. And next is cognitive code learning. Cognitive code learning was not so much a method as it was an approach that emphasizes a conscious awareness of rules and their applications to second language learning. It was a reaction to the strictly behavioristic practices of the ALM and ironically a return to some of the practices of grammar translation. As a teacher and materials developers saw that encasing porting of potentially rote material was not creating communicatively proficient learners. A new twist was needed, and cognitive code learning appeared to provide just such a twist. Unfortunately, the innovation to the rule paradigms, intricacies, and exceptions of a language overtax the mental reserve of language student. The proficients needed space and verve and innovative minds. In the spirit 1970s were up to the challenge. designer methods of the spirited 1970s. The first, perhaps more than in other decade in modern language teaching history, research on second language learning and teaching grew from an offshoot of linguistics to a discipline in its own right. As more and more scholars specialize their efforts in second language acquisition studies, our knowledge of how people learn language inside and outside the classroom mushroomed. Second, in this spirited atmosphere of pioneering research, a number of innovative, if not revolutionary methods were conceived. These designer methods, to borrow a term from Noonan at 1989, were soon marketed by entrepreneurs as the latest and the greatest applications of the multidisciplinary research finding of the day. That's all for today, guys. I hope you like it and I hope you learned something new from this video. And please stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you everyone. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.